Wonderful. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. Either you're very interested in the journey to the autonomous enterprise or you're lost. Either way, we appreciate you being here. Super excited to be with Mark from Genworth. We'll go into a little bit of our background and talk about what we're seeing in the market, more specifically how Genworth is optimizing some of their enterprise business process workflows through Amazon Connect, some of the other AWS technologies. Cool. So you want to start with your intro?
Yeah, Mark Downey. I started at Genworth about 13 years ago. I'm currently own the telecom and now most recently the AWS Connect experience. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. My name is Matt Orlano. I'm a senior vice president, help to lead the Amazon Business Group, AWS Business Group for Genpact. My background's about 22 years management technology consulting. I was actually acquired into Genpact. I was fortunate enough to be a president and co-founder of a firm that they acquired a few months ago. Before that, I led the global strategy team in another large GSI, but always around data, business process, at the intersection of artificial intelligence. So look forward to the conversation today. Awesome. So a couple topics we want to talk about. So we're going to cover off on the journey to the autonomous enterprise, help to define what autonomy ultimately is. I think that's somewhat of a contested conversation these days as it relates to how much autonomy, where the human actually sits within the conversation around agents, within the loop, the collaborator with the agents, and touch on modernization and what it means to modernize. Mark's going to go into some detail around how Genworth modernized their infrastructure and some of their core business processes. Talk about real-world autonomy in action. Talk about the leadership mindset shift. We're seeing, obviously, much of this push from the top down. I think 12 months ago it was very much so a board directive. I think it still is, but now it's starting to trickle down to line of business and how do you optimize your business process from co-pilot all the way through truly agentic-based business processes. Answer some questions and then talk about the future and some closing takeaways. So with that, the journey to autonomy. So setting the stage here. So over the course of the last, let's say 7 to 10 years, I believe most of you in the room, our customers, and Genworth have moved from migration. You've seen this migration of your legacy application estate and your data estate into the cloud, right? Providing that scalability, resiliency, governance, control, and optimization. As we think about moving towards this modernized state, we believe this opportunity of modernization acts as this runway, and autonomy allows you kind of to take off, to truly rethink from a first principle perspective your business processes. So unencumbered, taking away some of those legacy SOPs and really transforming. And that's how you can optimize process. That's how you can get towards this future state of autonomy. We did some primary research. We're actually going to release it in January, so I hope we have the opportunity to send to everybody here. And from there, what we actually found, which I find fairly compelling, is about 12% of the senior execs that we spoke with believe they're on the path towards autonomy, with AI embedded, scaled, and ultimately governed across their business. So that might seem like actually a high number, but I think as you have been across the conference over the last 2 days, you heard agents about 4,000 times, and we'll continue to hear them over the course of the next 3 days. I think most organizations probably would think they're on that path. But it's definitely something that is, I believe we're all looking to achieve, but the opportunity to get there, there's many steps that need to be in place, of which Mark will talk about how Genworth got there. So moving from AI-assisted to this concept of autonomy. So what we're seeing in the rise. So what is this autonomous enterprise? So multi-agent, this ecosystem. The keynote this morning talk about ecosystem of capabilities, agent core with things like observability, the learning model. Some of the recursive nature of these models, I think, is fairly compounding in the effect of those. The management of complex workflows. I'll talk about first principles a few times, but the ability to truly build with first principles, I think, is fairly compelling. So as you think about leveraging agents, try to take that first principle approach. You can manage kind of the existing processes that you have and rebuild with first principles and see where there are points of friction with compliance and regulatory and security teams. Responsibility by design. So from the infrastructure, data, model layer, all the way through the outcome, you really need to think about the responsibility and how having regulatory and compliance have a seat at the table. working with a large banking customer, and most of their agentic use cases actually get filtered through their compliance team to start, just to make sure that they understand the regulatory posture and the potential risk before they deploy these agents. AI is a collaborator and not a manager. I think this is really important. So AI and human as a collaborator, so bringing those two tenets together and making sure you understand how the human and the agent need to work together and having the off-ramps necessary. So when the probabilistic nature of these outcomes and the answers really need to be governed and managed by humans. And finally, always on, always learning, so on and so forth. But the path towards this concept of autonomy, we believe takes 3 stages, right? It's really 3 phases. Most of you are probably familiar with the first one, which is the co-pilot, right? But it's hard to bank returns of a co-pilot. So if what's 10% of your efficiency in a day, the compounding effect of that 10% across your 50,000 employees, it's hard to kind of underwrite that return from a CFO perspective. So while that's unlocking knowledge, it's unlocking the experience of most individuals, I think for the office of the CFO, and as you think about presenting this to the street or your shareholders, it's very much so hard. But by contrast, we're starting to see the acceleration of vertical use cases at the departmental level and multi-agent workflows at the enterprise level that are truly targeting measurable outcomes. So whether it's the return of bad debt, right? Whether it's the optimization of agents, right? Of call activity, it really becomes important. So what you measure determines that answer. And the returns should also include this concept of AI fluency, where actually the capability compounds across thousands of tasks. So that sets the stage for this P&L impact that I believe is in phase 2 and 3 of this journey. So most people start with the co-pilot use cases, which I think are fairly impactful, but that opportunity to bank returns for your CFO and show that we're actually optimizing the business, I think is something that most organizations aspire towards, and we see that in kind of the 2nd and 3rd phase, which is vertical use cases and then kind of into this full end-to-end agentic. But Mark, for you within Genworth, how are you guys seeing kind of the agent experience?
Yeah, so it's exactly that. We started Copilot, and it's really testing the waters, right? And you see a lot of that. But those early wins start to build that snowball towards, okay, now where else can we use it? Who else has it? In a native way. And how I'm thinking about it is a lot with how do we enable our agents to have a much more human experience with the callers, right? They're our customers, policyholders. We want to make sure that when they call us, they're not sitting through, tippity tap. Oh, my computer's slow. I'm sorry. That's always been a frustration with that caller experience. The caller never makes that connection to our agents, what we've been able to do and what we're looking to do as the journey goes on is have the AI fetch all of that data ahead of time. We start with when the caller comes in, we've identified them, we know their policy number, start pulling all that, getting that, all of the previous call history in line, and then when the agent starts, they kind of have that right in front of them in a way that they haven't before.
It's interesting. We spent some time with the Connect team earlier today, and they were talking about leveraging Connect not only just for kind of the agent experience, but effectuating kind of the end-to-end business process. So whether for a healthcare company driving towards the collection of appeals information, so really using that agent to augment the human, and in many cases take it all the way through kind of the last mile. So you guys experiencing that?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing that, particularly on the claims side, where the claims are sent in electronically, and we can actually take anywhere from, it used to be 3 weeks to pay a claim. Now we're down to a matter of days because we can identify, this is a duplicate, this is potential fraud. We can find all those early and get those in front of a human. But the vast majority of them, we're able to just say, that can be paid. That's a normal claim, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. We were speaking to a healthcare client most recently, and their biggest fear was the external and internal agent clash. So you have an authorization on one side. The agent produces the authorization, helps to orchestrate that. On the other end, you have the denial, right? So you just keep going back and forth, and the agent keeps prepping information and resubmitting it, and the other agent keeps denying it based on some level of medical information. So do you guys have any of that experience or?
Not as yet. Not as yet. Once we run it through the process, it's really that final eyes on it, human eyes, that will say it, and we don't send any of that back through. It's agent has said it goes.
Got it.
So yeah, cool. Making sure that human in the loop has the final say.
That's awesome. So we see progress, and I think we heard that today in the keynote, and we will continue to hear the progress around AI. So the foundation, though, we believe is somewhat weak, and I think most of the folks in the room are probably struggling with the architecture, the interaction of these agents, how they need to come together, how you need to govern agent-to-agent interaction, the data that sits underneath. What we've seen kind of in our experience is about 50% of executives expect autonomous decision-making in 3 years, which is a fairly significant amount of money, a percentage from a Fortune 500 Global 2000 perspective. But 3% are implementing orchestration today. I think orchestration is a heavy topic around how you're going to move from human into agent into the layers that sit underneath and kind of this API level. But what we're seeing is the barriers and where focus needs to be applied over the coming 36 months, skills. So we're spending a significant amount of time, money, and energy in upskilling. And we believe everyone in the enterprise should be a practitioner, right? So we should all be practitioners.
Absolutely.
Are you seeing that within Genworth?
Absolutely. We've recently rolled out to everybody this kind of launching service where they can go classes, learn their prompting, learn here's what these things are doing in the background, all that kind of stuff. We also recently set up our AI COE, right, Center of Excellence, and that's key because they can kind of oversee all of the aspects of where it's being used and make sure is this the right use case, or have you put the right controls on this, and I mean that's critical. Data, we've always had data governance in place, but you really need to shore them up because you're going from humans using the data to autonomous operations using the data, and when you see the end result, it doesn't show you here's the data that got me there, right? You have to go looking for that. Sure. And so making sure that governance is up front and making sure that the AI is going to use the data correctly. That's going to be crucial.
Yeah, one question we get often around. So 2 questions for you. One around who's in the COE, who are the participants, and then 2, do you have a separate data governance and AI governance team, and what's the point of convergence there that you see?
So we do have separate data and AI governance, and they work closely together, of course. What was the first question?
Who sits in that team, the AI governance? So the AI COE and the governance team, who actually sits there? Compliance, regulatory.
So we actually have AI, or IT is in the driver's seat there. Okay. But compliance is always going to have a say in it. In fact, that's been one of those constant battles that we've had this year of getting them to approve things. Just as I had this conversation at lunch today where I was saying, just taking the simple summary of the call has taken us 7 months, and it took like 20 minutes of implementation, and all the rest of it was trying to get the lawyers to agree. Right. So they're gonna have a say, but we don't want them in the driver's seat.
Yes. Makes perfect sense. Even in data governance, you get the lawyers in the room and you can't do anything. Yeah. So, ask for forgiveness sometimes, but I think it's important and instructive as you're on your journey, towards this concept of agentic and autonomous. Who are the participants? And I think in any somewhat new wave of technology. There's always the debate of centralization versus decentralization versus federation. And I think control becomes an important tenet and term as you think about, so how much control do you want to exert over the tech, over the models, over the use cases? So do you guys struggle with how much you want to kind of federate this out to the business and capability?
It's going to be a learning experience as of now. Right now, the COE is mostly there for enablement, right? They're there to help get the business off the ground with the use cases that they want to see, right? Now, there's a lot of people clamoring for it, and we want to make sure we just get them through and thinking about it the right way, so that we can accelerate it and get that implemented for them. But
that's great.
Sometimes they just want to throw it, just turn the on switch, right? Yeah. But you definitely want to make sure that you've set it up correctly. Otherwise, you're going to get all kinds of results.
Sure. That's where I think the observability aspect and what we've heard from Agent Core and some of the new releases from the keynote are really important, and the learning process behind that. So how you go from observability to learning will be really important over the coming weeks and months as Agent Core becomes more mainstream as the platform of choice. So why this concept of modernization, and Mark touched on it, and modernization isn't just infrastructure or data or models, it's kind of the entire ecosystem of people, process, and technology, and those tenets haven't changed over the course of the last 40 years of technology modernization. But we believe modernization is obviously this concept of resiliency and scalability, and we've talked about that in data readiness. So for Genworth, obviously making sure that we understand our customer, right? Understand the data. Yep. Master data becomes very important in this conversation. So within the Connect landscape, you're seeing the experience of agent, the experience to outcome, but the data preparation and unstructured data tagging and labeling becomes really important. So have you guys had to wrestle with any of those problems?
Sure, and we're continuing to. With the modernization project we undertook last year, we set the foundation, and so we really set up for the, here's all the data that the callers are going to have, but it was all from the mainframe. Now we're getting all the soft data. What letters did we send them, in the past month? What calls have they made? What did they need last time? Who did they talk to? And we need to make use of all that data real time when they call back. And so, and it's all about making sure that it's set up, it's accessible, and like you said, tagged properly, right?
We were in a session earlier today, and one of the Connect leaders said if the prompt or the customer service reaction is, thanks for calling, how can I help you? Yeah. You've already lost the caller. Yeah. So you should know why people are looking to engage, what their problems are, the background behind it. It's like when my cable goes out and I call, and the first thing they ask me to do is, reset my router, which I've now done 4 times before I called, right? Because what would you do when you're,
first thing.
That's exactly right.
Turn it off, turn it on.
So that end-to-end experience and understanding the problem, having some kind of intuition behind it, but trying to solve it end-to-end through this agentic approach, I think is important.
Yeah.
So skipping steps as it relates to these pilots. So I think most people started with, single agent pilots, getting to multi-agent. I think this concept of end-to-end agentic across your primary workflows, order to cash, record to report, source to pay, will be an evolution. I think you're seeing many people trying to focus on, the back and forth of probabilistic versus deterministic, and when it becomes deterministic, how to use, in AWS terms, like Lambda functions to do that versus the experience of, using something like Agent Core, or obviously Bedrock. But do you guys kind of think about the application of agents and when it becomes more business rule driven versus where you actually need the agent to function and have intuition?
Sure. We've been doing a lot of experimentation. None of this is in our production environment yet. But if you think about the IVR experience, when somebody calls in, the old approach and our current production approach is you have all these utterances, and they all point to a number of cues, right? very labor intensive to update that list, to make sure it's relevant and it's going to the right queue and all that kind of stuff. Well, now what we can do is we can say, here are my queues, here's what they can do. Just take whatever the customer asked for, send that through Bedrock, and let Bedrock say, here's the best place to send it. And we find, and again, this is development, but we're finding it very reliable to get it to a queue that can actually handle their call. And that, instantly, maximizes how many utterances you can handle because it's infinite. And, if you have a new event that the caller might call back about, you can just put that in one of the queues and say, I take these kind of calls, and then instantly it's updated.
That's amazing.
And that updates your whole routing. Is so, the speed in which you can react goes from 2 weeks to 2 minutes.
We talked about today and yesterday with a few clients, this concept of fine tuning, right? And I think fine tuning the model based on your semantic and language. Do you guys see that? Are the foundational models precise enough, right, for
this? Yeah, for this particular use case that I'm mentioning, we're using a miniature model to get it as fast as possible. Yep. Because you don't want somebody waiting there,
right.
listening to whole music. And we found that has been just fine for being able to accurately get it to the right queue. No tuning, just out of the box.
That's
pretty. It's pretty crazy because from what we used to have, prior to AWS, we were on Nuance. Nuance takes that say anything main menu, and they compile it. So all we received was a binary. To update that binary, you would go through a back and forth process that would be several months just to get. Can we add one phrase? So, yeah.
So that kind of brings to the last point of legacy systems. So you had Nuance prior to, obviously moving to Connect is a different experience, a different set of capabilities, but how much did the legacy either set you back, or how much of that did you need to prepare for before unlocking capabilities?
So we were not on the newest version of Nuance either. Ours was about 15 years.
Makes it easier.
Oh, just kidding. 15 years. Well, it makes it easier because you just start with a health
unplug
burn it down. But you really do have to restart at that point because none of it was portable, except for the utterances. We were able to import the 4,000 phrases, but now we're going to throw them out. So. So legacy really was holding us back, and we had identified that, and we had gone through several iterations of what do we want to do with the experience, and it wasn't really until we identified what's our North Star here, and it started with that customer experience. How do we really make the customer satisfied when they call? We don't necessarily want them to call back, reduce the call volume, but we want to make sure that they had a good experience, right? And so, within 2 months of us rolling out Connect, we saw our CSAT scores up 14 points.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's been transformative. And the speed in which we're able to react, like I said, being able to implement changes, a week instead of a month, or whatever it be. It's been fantastic.
That's awesome. So Mark's going to talk, as he has for the better part of the last 27 minutes, about the Genworth journey, but talk a little bit about kind of this concept of predictive, right, self-healing, and maybe a little bit about where you see the journey next, right? What's upcoming?
Yeah. So a lot of things of what we're working on right now is, again, on that predictive routing. I mentioned kind of what we're working on there with, take whatever the customer has said, what they've indicated to us, and get an LLM to identify what queue are they going to need to go to, what kind of help do they need. The other thing we do is we see, did they just talk to somebody 15 minutes ago? Can we just connect them back to them? Because that's, and a lot of times that's really helpful because you don't have to start from square one. the predictive routing, the self-healing, that's something that we're working on right now, is we're looking at, okay, how do we take our CloudWatch data and identify, okay, we seem to have some audio issues here in the Philippines or in Belize. How do we start to put in the processes to get that fixed, get that healing? Because that's been a challenge for us, as some agents in far off places having audio issues, or particular agents having mic issues. It'd be great to be able to identify, hey, we're getting sound quality issues out of this agent, and reach out to them. Don't wait for them to reach out to the help desk. So that's one thing that we're working on now. Is how do we utilize all that data streaming in to identify things up front?
That classification problem, while basic, right? But
Right.
just classification and queuing
Yeah.
could make a huge difference on kind of who takes the call and resolution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And if they call into the help desk, they're going to try debugging things for 20 minutes. That's 20 minutes the agent isn't off. If we have already identified, hey, the issue's your mic, fix your mic.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit about our journey. We had 1,600 call center agents moved over from our Avaya on-prem telecom. So setting up how we built our Connect flow is identify the caller, find out are they a real caller, because that still happens. You still get spam calls for a call center. I don't know why. It's like, what do they hope to gain? But you still get those. So we actually have
Competition, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what is this? So we've actually been able to kind of just drop all of those spam calls pretty readily, which was great. It was, and really all we had to do is put a step that would seem natural to a human, but computer's not going to do it, right? So identify the caller, call number, and again, send it through the intelligent routing. Did they receive a letter that's asking them to change their rates or change their options? We're going to get them straight to a specialized agent. We're going to skip all this, get them to an agent because they have questions, and this isn't going to answer it. So let's just get them to an
Can I
agent.
ask you a question on that? So you're tying campaign data,
Yeah.
right, into kind of the call center, so you understand or can have some level of understanding why, right? And through that why, then routing them to the most appropriate.
So a lot of what our campaigns might be is hey, we need to change the rates in your state, right? You're going to go up monthly payment 10% or whatever. It's kind of like healthcare.
Yep.
And that's obviously going to be a stressful call for the user, but we can get them to the agent that will give them options, right? Like, we can keep your rates the same, and we'll just change these options around, and in a lot of cases solve their issue, right? Like maybe you didn't really actually need this type of care that you have a rider on, so we can take that off for you, keep you where you are. Those sorts of decisions that we can walk you through. But they'll have received a very scary letter that they don't understand.
There's a compassion to the approach too in there.
Oh yeah,
right? Yeah. So.
Of course, yeah. We want to make sure it's never a fun conversation, right? And in a lot of cases, if you've seen Genworth's journey, we went from we were going to be $16 billion underwater with some of these policies to now we're within 1 or 2.
Wow. All because of Connect.
Over the past 10 years. No,
I'm just
yeah, good call. No, over the past 10 years through these rate actions. But you still you're there are customers. We want to take care of them, right? But we want to make sure that we are solvent and able to. So that's been it's been a journey. But that's one case where identifying the caller early on in the queue and not making them walk through a whole lot of extra effort, that sort of thing, can really change the experience.
Have the metrics changed? So years ago, I did some call center work. I'm by no means an expert, but things like average handling time, first call resolution, which Just because
Sure.
someone doesn't call back doesn't mean you actually resolve their problem, right?
That's true.
I mean, they're more angry. Like in healthcare, then you file, to CMS, and nobody actually wants that to happen. So have you found the metrics need to change as you deploy these technologies?
A lot of those metrics have stayed the same.
Okay.
But a lot of that hasn't changed yet. We haven't really gotten. We got the call routing in place, right? We've gotten it easier to contact us. Now we're moving on to how do we make it easier for the agent to help.
Okay.
And that's where we'll see a lot of those improvements. But from a net promoter score, obviously that has been a real. They're very satisfied talking to the Lexa. I forget what voice we selected, right? But that voice sounds a lot more friendly than apparently what we had.
Do you mind taking a question?
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
So you said before that when they got a letter, you verified that they got a letter.
Yeah.
You want to write it to an agent because you said that
Yeah.
AI agents aren't going to help them. My question is
We-
why? Did you consider trying to have an MVP or pilot to go, hey, let's give the AI some options.
Yeah.
It explains to them, clarifies, and says, well, you have this record with X, Y, and Z, and see how they can be able to do that.
So yeah, we have not. But that said, we're very early in our agent implementation. Like we're at the co-pilot stage, right? Phase 1. But I mean, as we move through it, I think that's a fantastic place to look.
Secondary piece of that
Sure.
as well, which is if you haven't, so you haven't gotten to that yet, understood you're my next format, are you still using that same capability though to try those options, but from like say agent assist or co-pilot perspective where,
Yeah.
okay, maybe you're not telling the customer these options, but you're providing the agent these options from the agent assist.
Yeah, and that's certainly where we're going to put it first. One of our kind of tenets right now is, don't force the customers to put up with, here are the AI options, right? We've always all seen, the ChatGPT. Here's my opinion, right? And it runs through the options. We don't want to put them through that until it's ready. So first step will be, like you said, agent assist. Present the relevant data to the agent and get it in front of them to present that. But again, we're not there yet, but definitely as we continue our journey into the autonomous journey, we will.
I think it's a great option as you think about, again, kind of the final response, agent-based, maybe a little bit of risk there, but reinforced learning. Like if the agent, the human agent is the one who's the arbiter of the decision based on what they're hearing from the human, then they can make that decision that goes back into the model. So I think it's a really important point and potentially a safer way to start to roll this out as you get towards more.
It's a great use case. I'm going to take that back.
Yeah. We talk about the AWS ecosystem. So how does Connect fit into the overall ecosystem of AWS within Genworth? What else sits out there across AWS?
So AWS Connect is definitely our biggest implementation right now, and we have the data to support it. So we call it the Enterprise Data Hub. So those are the two biggest implementations. But then we have our customer websites sitting in AWS right now. Our Pega, our customer assistant screens, that's sitting in Amazon. It's Pega's Amazon, but it's still within the borders. So most of our front-facing applications that a customer would deal with is in there. So it really allows us to do that data sharing full circle, right? If they, go onto our website, make an update, well, the agent can already know about that update when they call, if they call. And so that's something that's important to us is try to make that as seamless as possible. Again, harken back to our legacy days where they make an update on the web and it's going to be like 3 days before the agent even knows about it. So, and if they call, they're going to be very confused. And I've had I've had many of those conversations of like, yeah, I know we have web services, but that's not, they're going to the mainframe. So
that integrated approach.
Yeah.
What other integrations do you have outside of the AWS ecosystem?
We have some Azure capabilities right now. Most of that right now is our internal systems, like our analytical, actuarial systems. So none of them that need that real-time connection. Most of our real-time connections are happening in Amazon right now.
Great. Yeah, that's great.
What do we got here?
So from a capability perspective,
Yeah.
right, as you think about value creation within Gen AI and kind of the current versus future use cases, so you talked about summarization.
Summarization, yeah, we just got that rolled out, full agent-wide, just at the tail end of last month. And it's funny, it took us, like I said, 7 months to get through that compliance.
5 days of development.
5 days of development.
Yeah. 400 meetings.
Within 2 weeks, they were like, oh yeah, you can roll that out to all your agents now. So we started with 2 call flows. Now you can just roll it out with all of them. It's like, okay, you know. So like I said, snowball effects.
Yep.
You get one approval, you prove it right. It's really hard to demo with fake data.
Sure.
And that's something so it's really hard for compliance to be like, oh yeah, that'll be fine. It's like, but they don't see the real call, right? And so that's what they're really nervous about. So being able to pilot it with a couple real call flows, within two weeks they were like, yes, this is fine. We like this. The richness of the agent notes that they'll have available to them has gone up tenfold, right? Like, because now we're getting like a paragraph of text, 4,000 characters or more, whereas before, you know, in their call wrap up, they type a sentence, maybe
Sure.
2, and now we have like a full rundown of what the agent did in summary form. It's been fantastic. Agent assist, that's something that we're experimenting with now. But Auto QA is also going live, I think, in January. And one thing that we talked about at launch is kind of the limitations of the Auto QA of only having 10 AI actions on there. So hopefully that gets raised soon so we can do more and more with it, because I think that's going to be a really huge. What they told us about today was being able to give back a training report, right? And being able to say, here's where your agents need, some extra training, some extra validation. Give that back to the supervisor right away, and it's not something they have to go and discover over months of monitoring calls. They can
more advanced observability, and it's limited to 10 today.
The auto QA is like questions that the AI can identify in a transcript. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was actually mentioned one of the AWS discussions, I think, yesterday, and apparently it is a big interest. A lot of people to see if they can raise that. So I think there's some discussion about putting that in as a formal request for the pipeline, but no official word from AWS if they're going to pursue 10.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is really need more than 10. There was some work when they talked about classify the calls accordingly, or other places using third-party ways related to rates.
Great. No,
helpful.
Point.
Yeah. The other thing we're going to do early next year is start experimenting with, again, chatbots. We don't want to stick a chatbot in front of our customers, but we're okay with it on our employees, right? Let's experiment with them. So our internal help desk, being able to reset a password. It can ask questions. It can go fetch the magic questions and you can answer them, and then it can reset your password. That's. And it can do a lot more than that too, because it can go through the entire SOP archive and say, try these things. And if that doesn't work, okay, well, we'll go ahead and escalate your call. So that's something that we're about to embark on, and very excited about that.
On the SOP extraction, could you just expand on that? So are you using it in archive or actually to help create SOPs for processes of which that are yet to be fully defined?
So currently pointed at the archive,
Yep.
and then it can offer those suggestions real time, right? But to your point, I see us being able to then say, okay, now point it at successful interactions that it's because we have all the transcripts. Create SOPs based on what actions were taken that were successful. And we're actually trying to do that on the customer side too. Help them develop their knowledge base based on successful outcomes and have our knowledge archive for that. And then of course our knowledge archive for the agents is also going to be AI powered so they can ask questions. If they have questions come up during the call, they don't have to go surfing through the knowledge archives and trying to find the right keyword. They could just ask, and that's a big win.
Have you found the barrier, being somewhat of the guinea pig, right, in the organization starting, has compliance, they have a better understanding? I think some of the barriers are the fear of the unknown,
Yes.
right? The starting point. So you don't obviously want to be on the cover of the Wall Street Journal, as everybody has said for years, but
Right.
has the barrier towards entry and understanding for compliance, for legal, for regulatory dropped?
It's very much so. And we've seen it, the tide shift almost overnight. And it is about just being able to prove, like, hey, these things are useful, and it's not just about doing your job faster. It's about being able to do your job, right? Like a lot of those agent calls where they would have had to go to a knowledge archive, if they can't find the article, can't find it, it ends in a bad experience for the customer. It ends up the customer didn't get what they needed, but the agent found an article that was able to get rid of the caller, get to my next call.
Right.
So we don't want those, right? So enable that experience, enable the human connection between call center agent, customer service rep. Let's just call them reps because too many agents being thrown.
Right, that's right.
Between the rep and the customer, make sure that we've enabled that human connection to occur naturally.
That's wonderful. Taking a step back, the business case that you guys had when you first set out,
Yeah.
what were the primary metrics and how, I know you mentioned CSAT increasing significantly, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
What else did you start with, and
Yeah.
where are you seeing kind of the end state at this point?
The biggest use case that we had was our ability to react to things that are happening, like being able to react to a letter that we had to send out, not even just the rate action letters. One of our partners was a victim of the transfer software that just a couple of years ago got hacked and released. Well, they were a victim, we weren't, but they used it, and so some of our data was exposed that way, right? So they got these strange letters that said, hey, this company you never heard of had a breach, and so now your data's out there, right? And so when that happened, they came to my team, telecom team, and said, all right, we're getting all these calls, and they're coming into all these different queues. Is there anything you can do with the, say anything menu? No. That would take months. We'd send it off. We'd have a conversation with Nuance, and we'd have to get a compiled version back. There's no way. So we, eventually put in some hack into it where we could, send certain volumes of calls off, but we couldn't react, right? And not having the ability to react to present day events was a big use case. And we told them straight up, our system right now isn't in a state where you can react like that. But there's this system over here that you can. We've been looking at it. We really want it. So that was a big shift for the business to say, aha, there is a reason that we want this technology. So it's really, both sides really do want the same outcomes. They just don't talk the same language.
Was there a goal towards driving the the per unit cost of interaction down too? Was that a metric that you guys were looking at?
I mean, there's always those stats that are tracked. I don't think we drive them quite as hard as other companies.
Okay.
Because it depends. Prior to Genworth, I worked at AOL, and boy, did we drive those metrics hard. The only calls you let go on long are the ones that retain customers. But for Genworth, it really is about trying to solve customers' problem on that first call. First call resolution is a big one, and we do average handle time, all those type of stats, but we don't drive them quite as hard as others.
Cool, wonderful. We'll talk. We have 3 minutes left, and we have to be on time. So the leadership shift, right? We're seeing this going from obviously the board and the C-suite. So leaders are treating this concept of agents and agentic AI, as a capability that kind of rewires the concept of how work gets done. I think it's really important to think about how work gets done and how work gets done with agents. And with agents, I mean these bounded systems with context and perception and memory, and these multi-step capabilities with coordination of data. So really important in the proper guardrails. So really important as you go on this journey, redefine how work gets done. This agent and human interaction becomes important. And these production workflows with observability. I think the most interesting thing, we sat down with one of the agent core leaders today, very focused on observability, right? Being able in a regulatory environment, being able to produce the why, so the input and the output, and how these agents interacted, that becomes critically important in any regulatory experience. But just as you're trying to educate the masses and your leadership team as to how you derive this outcome. But I think successful execution follows kind of this consistent pattern where organizations start with high impact, low complexity use cases. They create the wins, similar to what Mark mentioned. They kind of codify that into these reusable kits, prompts, guardrails, data hooks, and then they scale that vertically where kind of P&L impact concentrates. And that point isn't accumulating proof of concepts, right? It's actually compounding the know-how and building more and more capability and outcomes. So I think that's really important. We'll keep moving. We're gonna go to the end if that's okay, because we have 1 minute. So I think key takeaways for us. So we believe this concept of the autonomous enterprise over the next 5 years, everyone will have some level of autonomy. So whether it's in sales conversions and what we're seeing in getting a 1.5-point increase, software development productivity. There was some capabilities that were rolled out today that I think are important. Software development lifecycle, agent development lifecycle, we're seeing about 35% improvement. But ensuring that you have the proper use cases, you start with Copilot, you think about single agent, you get towards this multi-agent. But as you start this journey of kind of multi-agent and agentic, really doing so thoughtfully, thinking with first principle, right? Taking kind of a step back and understanding how you're going to redefine the enterprise end to end. So for us at Genpact, being a business operator for our clients, we have firsthand experience of what that last mile needs to be, so we can kind of challenge the status quo. But what we've learned is do it responsibly, make sure you have the right safeguards in place, and over time, this kind of test, learn, and continue to accumulate knowledge is compounding, and that compounding effect becomes really, really important. So with that, Mark, I'll leave it to you to maybe give us the grand close.
So again, for your journey, set your North Star, get your business leaders to support that journey with you. It's a partnership, and make sure that you have the proper governance frameworks, and the rest will follow much easier after proper foundation is set up.
Awesome. Well, thank you. We appreciate everybody sitting in. Hopefully you were in the right spot, so you learned a little bit around kind of Mark's journey and what we're seeing in the marketplace. Come see us at our happy hour at 6 o'clock at Trattoria Reggiano. So thanks, and I hope everybody has a great show.